Good morning. So today we're on lesson 2 from the workbook of A Course in Miracles. I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. And again, with today's idea, we're just merely asked to apply it indiscriminately with the willingness to not exclude anything, but with the recommendation that we not attempt to include everything either, because the attempt to include everything could possibly introduce strain. And we want these lessons to be done with ease and with grace, not by the toil of the ego mind, which is attempting to get something or to do it right or to do it perfectly, but just as a way of helping us loosen the grip that our thinking has had on our minds and our hearts, so that we can get a little light in there and begin to see in a new way. And in the introduction, we read, and I'll remind you once again, some of the ideas the workbook present you will find hard to believe, and others may seem quite startling. So now in the course of your day, when you're utilizing this second lesson, there may be moments when you find, or you're sitting someplace perhaps, a place that's sort of been meaningful or stressful to you, and you're sitting someplace and you've been in there and you remember the lesson, and you look around and you say, I've given everything I see in this stressful situation all the meaning that it has for me. And there are different ways we could respond. One way would be with gratitude that we're finally finding out how and why things have been working the way they are, or with horror. The horror of recognizing that we're doing something to ourselves here. Now, either way, remember, this is about loosening your mind, loosening the thoughts in your mind that have been binding you. And you can experience that loosening in a sense, or in a positive or a negative way. Don't let the emotional experience that you have be the determiner of whether these lessons are actually working on you or not, because your emotions are not the determiner. The mind that is willing to do what's being asked of it is making its determination in the moment. So you're actively recognizing now, oh, I've given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. And just look around and apply it as it says. The exercise are the same as those the first one. Begin with the things that are near you and apply it to whatever your glance rests on. Then increase the range, move out, look further out there. Okay? Remain as indiscriminate as possible. Be willing to apply it to everything. Be willing to apply it to anything, but don't get hung up on applying it to everything because you're not asked to. That, we are told, will introduce strain. And I think the lightheartedness with which we're being asked to pursue this. Remember, there's a line in the Course where it says, the Holy Spirit needs happy learners to learn its joyful lessons. And the split mind, the dualistic minds that we come to this with at first, have a way of being able to see things in any way they want, which is what the lesson is saying. You can give it a negative meaning, or it could have a positive meaning. But I find if you keep the goal in mind, if we keep the goal in mind, if we remember the types of things that were being told in the introduction, that perhaps we're not going to welcome the ideas, that they may be hard to believe, we're not going to accept them, but it doesn't matter. None of that's going to matter in the end. What's going to matter is that you do as you're asked to do in each lesson, to the best of your ability, for the purpose that it's given to you in the lesson. The ego is going to try to run wild with all of these things. Again, you could be in a particular situation, one you've been in every day of your life for the last 10 years, one that's causing you stress, one that's perhaps been problematic, and in the midst of doing the lesson, in the midst of applying the lesson, realize that the reason that's been problematic is the meaning that you're giving it. Now, at first, that could be startling or shocking, but remember, this is the way out. This is the way of undoing. This is just the beginning of undoing, of freeing your mind from the facts, from the meanings that we have given things. This is an interesting line. Take the subjects simply as you see them. Now here, try to apply the exercise with equal ease to a body or a button, a fly or a floor, an arm or an apple. There's a playfulness there. There's an ease there. There's the attempt to do something that's quite serious and profound, but to not make it into a job, not make it into something that introduces stress and strain, but helps to alleviate the stress and the strain of the situations you found yourself in, perhaps for thousands and thousands of years, over and over again. And now we're beginning to understand exactly why we get into these situations. I mean, when you look at this, when you look at the lesson, we can begin to understand why we've been afraid of our own thinking. I mean, look at some of the things, look at the meaning we've given to some of the things that we face in the course of a simple day. See how it feels. Now, of course, when you begin to recognize that what's going on is, you getting the result of your own thinking, horror can set in right alongside of the fact that that's likewise a solution. I remember for myself when the call came from Jesus and he said, are you ready yet to help me save the world? And I finally was able to say yes to that. And he said to me, you're doing this to yourself. Well, there's a moment of full recognition of what that meant. I mean, that everything that had happened to me, I had asked for and gotten as I received, which could be devastating. But the opposite side of that was, wait a second, if I could do this to myself, if I can give all these things its meanings, if inherently nothing I see means anything, but I've overlaid the nothingness, everything, with my own meaning, and all the sickness, pain, suffering, and death is being brought to me because of the meaning I have given things. Now, with the full recognition of that as being what has occurred, I can then take a hold of my own thinking to the best of my ability to apply this mind training to begin to undo what I have done to myself, to begin to free myself from the thoughts that I previously bound myself with and I had become afraid of. And that's actually a joyful occurrence. It's good to know. It's great information. It doesn't mean you're going to remember this constantly. It doesn't mean yet that you're going to escape from all the terror of your life. But it does mean that now in the midst of the life that you're living, you have a tool, a new way of looking at it that can help you get through it and not have to suffer the way we had in the past, or not certainly not have to suffer as long as we had with the meaning that we've been given things that have caused us, distress in our own life. So, these lessons could be helpful for that. Again, you're being told, don't worry about your own resistance to it. The fact that you're resisting is an indication, the fact that you're experiencing resistance, that when we begin to work with the thoughts in our own mind, I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. The fact that you experience resistance is an indication that these lessons are beginning to have some efficacy. And we notice that. We notice, well, when I give it this type of meaning, I have this sort of experience. So if I am able to change my mind about the meaning that I'm giving to something, then I could have a different type of experience. And that's sort of the way your mind begins to open up, the way you begin to be loosened from old habitual patterns of thought that who knows how long they've been there, since the beginning of time, most likely. And remember, this takes a moment. It is a process. It says it's a systematic way. So we need to follow the system. I know that we could think thoughts that are going to tell us we know what the system does and how it works. But remember, it's myself. I have given that meaning to it. That isn't necessarily what it means. It's not necessarily how it has to be. And there's a line in the introduction when it says the purpose of the word, the transfer of training in true perception doesn't proceed in the same way as the transfer of learning does when we're engaged with the world on the world's terms. It does not work that way. Yet, your mind is still working that way and is going to question what it is you're doing with these lessons with that same old mind. Remember, that has been the problem in the first part of the workbook, the undoing. That is the thinking that is being addressed. So the evaluative, the critical thinking, the ideas of, well, this is the way I've learned in the past, and it doesn't seem to be working that way. That's because in the world, the transfer of learning does not proceed the same way as the transfer of learning is going to proceed as we do these lessons. And there's an obviously reason. What we've been learning in the world has covered up the truth of who we are. So as we unlearn the way we've learned in the world, and we unlearn what we've learned in the world that we thought we needed in order to survive, or even in order to be saved. As we unlearn those things and see the simplicity of the ways of salvation, our experience of ourselves and of everything around us begins to take on a different glow. But again, not in the manner with which we've been experiencing learning in the past. So, it's not that you're not going to have the expectations because the ego is not sort of undone in its entirety yet. It's still very active, and it may continue to be active throughout your whole sojourn. But the understanding of how the ego works, the understanding of, I have given everything I see, all the meaning that has to be, and the application for it certainly brings into question all the learning of the past that we've been using against ourselves, and gives us an opening in our mind so that we can begin to have a new way of learning with some new learnings that will be quite startling, possibly miraculous and healing. And that's eventually what we're after, and it can come at any moment. Don't confine the efficacy of the lessons to the way in which you've thought about how things work in the past, because all those thoughts have been limitations based on need and lack. And I'm here to remind you that you lack nothing. You've been given everything. We've forgotten it for a moment. And now we're learning to remember the truth that we need do nothing because we have no need at all. We have already been given everything, so there's nothing to get. All there is the uncovering of the ability for us to access the everythingness that is the true nature of our creation. So we'll stop there today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.